Welcome to a special episode of Biz One-on-One, focusing on the cannabis industry. A beneficiary of medical cannabis himself, Hadi Feltham, your grow-to guy, has immersed himself in the science of medical marijuana. As such, he's come to understand and appreciate the importance of the cultivation of cannabis. This has led him to being an expert in the construction of buildings designed to not only grow cannabis, but to grow the plant to achieve desired and specific results. Hadi believes that while recreational consumption is nice, the medical aspect of cannabis is where the industry will really flourish. Interesting perspective, Hadi. Welcome to Biz One-on-One.
Thank you, Randy, for having me.
Now, you come to this industry with many years of experience, and I always find it interesting when I look on LinkedIn and people in the cannabis business, and they have like 20 years experience, 30 years experience. You know, this wasn't legal.
It wasn't legal, and that's a challenge in the marketplace today. When we take a look at what's happening and what's going on, is that there's a disconnect between the corporate world and the cannabis users and growers of the past. So trying to bring those two together to create an ideal situation has created its own obstacles, let's say the least. So for myself, growing up in and around areas where cannabis was grown and used on a regular basis, different associates that I had growing in less than desirable conditions, learned a lot about how cannabis reacted to different environments. So using that information for myself now in the legal market, it's much easier to translate that.
And how is that going? How is that transition coming along? I mean, I can imagine it's got to be weird.
It's extremely challenging for a lot of different people, and I think the good growers are just going to be coming into the marketplace now. And there's a lot of LPs that are open at this point in time. They have great cultivators, they have great master growers who have the history and technical background on agriculture. But the micro cultivators who are coming into market now, which was legalized and the applications are available through Health Canada as of October 17th, those are the craft growers who are going to come into the marketplace and really have an introduction of the quality flower that we need in order for people to get the full benefits of it.
So you're specializing in the business of growing, building facilities to grow cannabis, but you say that the legalization or the recreational use area is not really what excites you most.
No, and recreational use is going to be a gateway for people to learn and understand a little bit more about how cannabis may react for them. Those who were a little bit timid of going into their doctoring, asking for information because it was an illegal product, may now step forward and tell people what's going on. For myself, I took medical cannabis and I take it for post-concussion issues, head traumas, and as well as arthritis. So I know the medical benefits of it. Other people who are just testing it for the first time, the 45 plus who are testing it again, are now learning the medical benefits of that, and they'll be able to go into the doctors. So from that perspective, the recreational side is good because it opens dialogue. The challenge is that it's going to demean the product that's out there for the medical side, I believe, because it's going to create an environment where the consistency may not be the same because we're looking after a different marketplace where we think the value actually is.
So tell us about what you're doing specifically with your business. Because you're a small business guy, right?
I'm a small business guy, but I'm helping. What I'm doing right now is I'm helping the craft growers enter into the gray, or from the gray market into the legal market, and I'm also helping LPs design buildings that are actually going to produce the cannabis that they're looking for. We are still, and again, I'm not going to say that we know the answers yet because we're still developing formulas on how it's going to work. When it comes to air circulation, different dosing formulas, lighting patterns, HPS to LED lighting, there's going to be a conversation for a long time on how those different products work. But what we do is we try and look at the individual company that is looking for a grow facility and meet their required expectations. We have old LPs that are running in several different size rooms, anywhere from a single 800,000 square foot room down to a 40,000 square foot and a 5,000 square foot room. Now, if you're doing the testing and want to produce a consistent product, and you take a product out of each one of those rooms, even though you may have used the same formula and dosing, you may have the same humidity in that room, the air circulation is different. So how does that impact the grow of the plant? How do we, and as we're testing and growing this out, we need to streamline that process and duplicate it so that we can identify exactly what it is that's happening within those different systems to create a duplicatable product.
So tell me about your own personal story. But you say you're using it to great effect for certain of your own health issues, but also I'm interested in how you got into the business in the first place and what your background was.
Well, actually, it was an interesting story. About 5 years ago, I was on the town of Crossfield council board, and I was a member of the town council. We were doing a little bit of an economic tour around the town of Crossfield and learning a little bit more about what happened there. And at that time, I was very aware that the product that I was getting wasn't what I needed.
And I'm just going to interrupt you for our viewers all over the world. Crossfield being a small town in...
Crossfield is a small town in Alberta.
Yeah.
It's about 3,300 people now.
Right.
At that time, I think we were at 2,800 people.
So you're experiencing a big...
we're experiencing a
population
big
boom.
Yes, we are. And within that case, it's about a half hour north of Calgary, Alberta. So within that area, we were taking a walk through some different production facilities. And again, I was very well aware that the product I was getting was not what I needed. But I didn't want to buy from the gray market or the black market. One, because I know that I have to make sure that everything that I do is above board. So I can't get a product in from a gray or a black market individual, because I want to make sure that if anything were to happen, it's tracked, it's traced, and everybody knows where it comes from. And the biggest challenge right now as the industry is that everybody says that they have the right product. Every construction company says that they know how to build to a cannabis standard. But yet, when you talk to them, they don't understand cannabis. So to design and build a cannabis facility, it's not just about the air exchange, it's about knowing the plants as well. And that's what we're able to provide for myself, is to be able to provide that environment that they can learn a little bit about how construction will actually grow with the plant, rather than trying to match those systems out a different way.
Hadi, the grow-to guy. So if I'm getting in the cannabis industry in a big way, I need to call you.
I'd be here to help.
Yeah, thank you for coming on Biz 101 and talking about this fascinating, exploding industry. Thank you, Hadi.
Thank you very much for having me.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Green hygienics is in the science of preserving and promoting the health of individuals, communities, and the planet. In an age where pharmaceuticals and the food supply are contributing factors in destroying our collective health, it is critical that we look to change this. Ron Loudoun founded Green Hygienics with all that in mind. The recent changes in policy in the cannabis sector have created exciting new opportunities. So Ron has been part of the sector for far longer and sees it as a catalyst to effect that change. So Ron Loudoun joining us today from Green Hygienics. So that is a fascinating intro. Tell me about that. I almost hesitate to ask you about your long background in the cannabis industry. That's always a tough question.
Yeah, I grew up on a farm in Deep Creek in the middle of nowhere, so we had to keep ourselves busy. I think the key word in that opening statement, though, is catalyst. And when you get a bit older, you start to look at things more longer term and more all-encompassing. And there's a lot of activity, obviously, in the cannabis space right now, and it's good. It's good for a lot of reasons. I mean, people are doing well with it, and that's fine. But it's even better for some of the reasons that people aren't seeing right now. And one of them is this: there's a lot of innovation being developed in that space. And that innovation can go beyond that industry, and a lot of people aren't considering that. One of the greatest problems on our planet right now is really not just the carbon emissions, but it's also methane emissions. Food waste is a huge source of methane emissions, and obviously factory farming. The technologies that and some that we have, a hybrid aeroponic method for growing, for instance, can be used in the urban agriculture space. Our food system is broken.
It's becoming general consciousness that our food doesn't have the nutrition that it used to have.
Doesn't have the taste, doesn't have the nutrition. People are recognizing that.
And they want to also buy local, or the best idea is if they could actually buy from like the old days where they knew that their food was being, grown by a farmer in a normal type of scenario.
And locally.
Yes.
Local, fresh, and safe.
So Green Hygienics is a cannabis company that is using a particular form of this hydroponics, aeroponics, and that's your niche in the cannabis industry. But I'm really intrigued by what you're saying about how it's going to be applicable in the food business.
Yeah, so like I say, Green Hygienics applies itself to solutions for communities and people, and it really, we're taking our technology from the cannabis space and we're going to leverage it into the food space. I was explaining to a gentleman, he said, well, I'm from Chicago. I said, well, how was your produce last winter? He says, terrible. A head of lettuce was $5. There was a film on it and it was brown and we were lucky to get it. It's trucked in from California. 70% of the produce in the States, of all the United States, is trucked in from California to the eastern cities. By the way, 30% of that stays on the ground and it's a waste and produces methane. So that 70% gets over to Chicago, to this gentleman's town. Of that 70%, 50% of it, by the way, is used. The other 50% is in the dump on the ground producing methane. So you've got that low percentage of finished food there. It's a week by the time it gets there. It's been sprayed. The soil's back there. Pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides have been used on the soil. So the soils are contaminated, and it gets worse because they're contaminating the aquifers there. What aquifers are left because you're using so much water? Our preferred method is a hybrid aeroponic method. There is new technology with regard to lights, for instance. A plant grows using a particular spectrum of the light throughout the cycle of the plant. For instance, cannabis, when it's flowering, will use the red spectrum. Well, you don't need an old halogen light. An LED light, you shut off the other 90% during the life cycle that it's not using, and you apply red light during that stage of the plant. Now you've just created an efficiency. Every head of lettuce or every bud of that cannabis is perfect. We don't use pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. What's left? A root. Not dirt. We don't throw a pail of dirt from growing, or rock wall, or contaminated water. We have a root hanging there that no pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides have been applied to. It's a clean root. That goes out in the back in a digester and produces methane, which we use to run a generator to power the LED lights.
Wow.
There's zero waste.
That can be economically viable. That's the question mark.
It isn't a question mark. Go down to Whole Foods. What are you paying for an organic head of lettuce? The time has arrived where this is a viable solution. We have the technology. We have the consumers willing to pay a little bit more for organic, for safe food that can be grown and create jobs right in their local community. So the solutions are here. We just have to implement them.
So Green Hygienics, what's the plan going forward in the next little while?
I think what you want to do with it, within the cannabis space, is build a strong balance sheet and demonstrate a profitable operation, firstly within that space, because there's not a lot of people doing that right now. And I think what we do is very, very unique, and it's obviously very, very efficient. And we produce a better than organic, clean product at the end of the day that people within that industry, the consumers within that space, really want the best. It's the nature of that industry. Mm-hmm. People, if you said, here's 10 pounds and it's really inexpensive, it's a great deal. But there's this 1 pound over here. It's really, really expensive. 100% of the time, the people that are long-term or intelligent in that space will take the better stuff. So that's where we want to position ourselves within that space, and we want to put ourselves in a position to take advantage of the next wave, which is applying that technology. And we're working on, we have 4 PhDs coming aboard, and we're looking on identifying systems, methods, and apparatus that can be patented, and we're going to take it to the next stage, which is the food industry.
Awesome. Can't wait to taste some of this better quality lettuce.
Just like back in the old days on the farm.
Yeah, absolutely. Ron, thank you so much for coming
Thanks
on
for
Biz
having me.
101. Good luck.
Cheers.
Randy Karren, founder and chairman of Joi Botanicals, sees the legalization of marijuana as an exciting business opportunity. However, many not connected to the industry, like banks for example, are reluctant to support this budding sector. Randy says this is due to the staggering amount of misinformation out there. So he's here to talk about the exciting opportunities that the new industry brings, some of the headaches that accompany it, and why Joi Botanicals is poised to thrive in this new market. Great first name, by the way, Randy.
Thank you.
So what were you doing before you got into the cannabis business?
Randy, I was a senior executive for an engineering, procurement, and construction company globally across all of North America, in fact, well, globally across the world. And I traveled the world looking at new businesses, how to develop new businesses, how to grow businesses out of what we had there, and looking at the strategy and how the businesses could better improve themselves and become more profitable.
How did you get into the cannabis business?
How did I get into the cannabis business? My son in 2015, and I said to him, well, I have some money to invest. Would you like to invest it with me? And he said, yes, I would. He said, what kind of business would you like to be in? And he ran away and come back with a proposal to me. He said, I want to be in the cannabis business. And I looked at him and said, bloody hell. I sent you away, and I told you I was serious about this, and you come back with this story about this, we're going to raise marijuana. It may become recreational and legally recreational, and at that time there was no hint of that.
2015?
2015.
Yeah.
Only the rumors were going around. There wasn't really a fact. We didn't have our JT, wasn't in the government yet.
Yeah.
Learned a lot about cannabis over the time being. But I guess some of the other reasons I'm in the business, my mother in 2002 passed away with lung cancer. And she was quite ill for a number of months, and I watched her slowly pass away. But she also was absolutely terrified. And cannabis would not have solved that problem, would not have cured the cancer, but it would have made her final days much more palatable and comfortable for her.
And now you're a cancer survivor yourself.
I am a cancer survivor. I don't talk about it a whole bunch. In 2007, I had, the doctors would call it squamous cell carcinoma. So I had tongue cancers. So at that time, they removed 1/3 of my tongue and removed some lymph nodes from up here. And then I have this wonderful accent around on how I talk because of that.
Right.
Having learned how to talk all over again. And my tongue is now 1/3 of it is from my wrist.
Wow.
It's a procedure developed in Alberta, and they cut off my wrist, the flabby part of my wrist here, and sewed it onto my tongue.
That's amazing. Now, so the medical cannabis business and cancer. Talk to me about that.
The whole problem stems from the fact in the United States, where most of the research is done, the United States of America as a country deems cannabis to be a harmful substance, though it has no redeeming value. So they have not done any research on that. So there's been no documented research about what cannabis will and will not do in the United States. Doctors are very careful not to recommend anything that doesn't have the backup in the research.
They don't have years and years and years of double-blind clinical studies, et cetera, et cetera.
All the stuff that they have to have eventually.
You're off and running. You're about to open your first plan. What are the future plans for the company?
Good question, Randy. The intent we have right now is that we have 14,000 square foot of grow operation. Our intent is we have another 4 acres of land on the same plot of land we have, and we have 5 acres next door that we can access if we need to. The intent would be to ramp it up and move into a larger facility, perhaps 40,000, 50,000 square foot, and bring in a larger partner to help us out in that regard, and kind of build the business into a more sustainable size. I think 14,000 is a good size, but moving up into 65,000 square foot would put us more in line with where you have to be in order to operate in this business.
Yeah, and then you can create an exit for you and your other shareholders by going public or sell to a bigger company.
Provides a lot more options that way for sure.
So Randy, what actual aspect of the cannabis business did you and your son decide to get into?
Our plan is to move into the growing and cultivation and sale of cannabis flower and cannabis oil. And after that, we'll sell in Alberta. We'll sell to the public via the prescription method, or we'll sell to the AGLC, and the AGLC will in turn sell to dispensaries and also to online to individual users of cannabis as well. So that's the area we're in. We're not in the dispensary area of the business.
So where are you at now?
Where are we at now? We're in the final stages of our Health Canada permit application. We're in the phase where they will ask us to provide evidence of we're ready to grow. Our facility is virtually complete at this time. We have what we have as far as the procedures and standards and how we're going to grow is now written and ready to go. So we're waiting for Health Canada to come back and say, we need your evidence, provide us evidence. And the evidence includes all the procedures and systems we have. The facility has to be complete. All the security system has to be fully functional.
So how much have you invested in the actual facility? By the time you open the doors, how much capital will have gone into it?
Our investment, there's me and 9 other partners in the business, and we've invested, at this point in time, we believe the final investment figure will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 million.
Wow. And was it easy to get any financing for that, or is it all equity?
It's all equity, yes. We are, by the terms of our bankers, we're still drug lords.
Yeah.
They will not loan any money to a cannabis business.
Let's not get down that road. Banks are so helpful when you don't need the money.
Yeah.
Randy, Karren from Joi Botanical, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it.